Those two men were murdered.
They weren't going to let them out alive.
Marijuana is not something that should be so high in your pedestal that you're willing to die a violent death for it.
The FBI observer fired one round and fatally wounded Crosland.
They let Raleigh bleed to death, and they didn't make sure my brother wasn't out.
There definitely was a government conspiracy.
In a rural corner of southwest Michigan, Grover Thomas Crosland built Rainbow Farm as an oasis of freedom,
including the freedom to smoke marijuana long before it was legal.
Those freedoms, or felonies, led to a personal feud with law enforcement and ultimately a deadly 4-day standoff in a forgotten battle of the war on drugs.
Pass me the urban, I'll burn the herb. Pass me the urban, I'll burn the herb.
Pot was easy to come by there, you know, Rainbow Farm, that's what pot's about, and you could always get it there.
I just remember going out there and having a blast. A lot of people come out there from all over the United States. Everybody just couldn't believe it. It just felt so free out there and a whole different place.
Just by the simple fact, all these people show up to this because they know this is a rare spot in America to be free. You know, I mean, they know it's very rare.
Grover Thomas Crosland had a vision when he founded Rainbow Farm.
Tom and his partner Roland, or Raleigh Rom, bought the overgrown property in 1993 and turned it into a toker's utopia.
Thousands came for the annual Hemp Aid and Roach Roast, where folks could come in, camp out, and spark up a joint.
Tom's brother Jimmy Crosland was a regular.
Always having a good time. Indulged a little bit in the smoke they had because they always had the best stuff.
Along with his son, Boss Crosland, Tom's nephew.
I was about 16 or 17 when he started having the first festivals, and it was a blast. I mean, I was right at the right age.
Rainbow Farm attracted celebrities like Tommy Chong and Merle Haggard, coming to experience a sense of freedom that was pure Michigan.
Every movie.
Jimmy still lives down the road from the Rainbow Farm site in Vandalia. He remembers more than just the weed. Cannabis was a big part of the Rainbow Farm movement, but so was the fight to legalize it. At every event, Tom and Raleigh would set up voter registration tables, had petitions for new ballot measures, or brought literature on voting to end marijuana prohibition.
So he always had voter registration set up, and he was a strict man on getting people to vote.
It was a fight Tom was willing to die for.
People that are there to serve and protect us, to circumvent your civil liberties by searching you at any whim while you're going down the road. You know, what's that for, man?
Even though it's illegal for Tom as a convicted felon, he keeps guns and ammunition at his home on the Rainbow Farm campground. Tom Crosland tells people there's a system of tunnels under the property ready for escape in case of a government raid. He says the grounds are littered with mines and booby traps.
Jimmy still remembers the warnings from his brother when he went to the farm on day one of the standoff.
They says, well, you want to smoke a joint? I says, sure. He said, let's go in the house. So we went in the house, and the first thing he says is, watch out for all these wires going through here. I said, what are those doing? And he said, this house is rigged to blow. I said, well, we better smoke a joint outside. I said,
Once Rainbow Farm is up and going, it doesn't take long to get the attention of local law enforcement.
Starting with Hemp Aid in 1998, Rainbow Farm hosts 5 festivals over a 3-year span. Among the crowds are undercover agents and confidential informants working with police.
Then, April 21st, 2001, 17-year-old Conrad Hornrack dies in a car crash after leaving the 420 Marijuana Celebration Festival at Rainbow Farm. Less than 3 weeks later, on May 8th, Cass County prosecutor Scott Teeter, along with the Michigan Attorney General, filed for civil asset forfeiture, where the state would take ownership of Rainbow Farm and everything on it for being connected to a drug operation.
May 9th, police execute a search warrant at Tom and Raleigh's home to seize tax documents. They find at least 200 marijuana plants.
Then Michigan Attorney General Jennifer Granlome says the Rainbow Farm festivals are, quote, little more than an excuse for drug dealers to peddle their wares from a carnival booth instead of from a street corner.
Tom Crosland and Roland Rahm are arrested, charged with manufacturing marijuana, maintaining a drug house, and felony possession of a firearm.
He always had a little pot. He never did have a big bunch of pot. He never did deal it.
So what the prosecutor said is they found 200 plants.
Yeah, but they're only about that high.
Raleigh's son from a previous marriage, Robert, is taken into foster care. Tom and Raleigh plead not guilty.
Jury trials are scheduled for December and January. On June 29th, a judge issues a temporary restraining order to stop festivals at Rainbow Farm until the trial.
Crosland still hosts a festival in mid-August, with another planned for Labor Day weekend.
He was a citizen of the United States, and he was willing to die for his land. And that's what it came down to.
Letters between Tom Crosland and Cass County prosecutor Scott Teeter show the two on a collision course.
I've discussed this with my family, and we are all prepared to die on this land before we allow it to be stolen from us. How should we be prepared to die? Are you planning to burn us out like they did in Waco? Or will you have snipers shoot us through our windows like the Weavers at Ruby Ridge? Maybe the governor can call in the National Guard for another Kent state.
On August 17th, an undercover detective buys a ticket to a Rainbow Farm event. He says Crosland and Rahm are there smoking pot, and Crosland even offers the agent a hit.
Smoking weed violates Tom and Raleigh's bond agreement. August 31st, 2001, prosecutor Scott Teeter is expecting Tom Crosland and Raleigh Rahm in court, where he plans to ask a judge to revoke their bond and put them in jail.
Neither show up. They're at Rainbow Farm, ready to burn it to the ground. Cass County prosecutor Scott Teeter is inside the courthouse waiting for Tom Crosland and Raleigh Rahm for the hearing to revoke their bond.
If the prosecutor succeeds, Tom and Raleigh go to jail and the government takes control of Rainbow Farm.
About a half hour before the hearing, Teeter gets the call. Rainbow Farm is on fire.
He looked at me and said, "Doug, fasten your seatbelt. We're going to have a bumpy ride."
Doug Lineback was the general manager at Rainbow Farm.
When Tom bought the place, it was overgrown.
That Friday, after deciding to skip their court appearance, Tom and Raleigh hand Doug their wills, giving everything to Raleigh's son.
I said, "Tom, you know what'll happen if you don't go to that hearing." He said, "I know what'll happen, but I also know they're not going to take my buildings, my house, anything we build out here and the improvements we made on this property, I'm not going to give to the state. They don't deserve it. So I'll burn it down first." And that's what he did.
Court records show prosecutor Teeter never offered a plea agreement to Tom or Raleigh.
From about 99, when those letters were exchanged, I think Mr. Teeter's approach to this was quite hardened, and he was no longer interested in talking this out, but basically just bringing, a prosecution.
Journalist Dean Kuipers wrote Burning Rainbow Farm and interviewed prosecutor Teeter about the events leading to the standoff.
He did think it was a tragedy. He didn't think certainly that it was going to end like that. He thought what was going to happen was these guys were going to get arrested and they might fight the forfeiture in court, and it would be a battle, and maybe they would go to jail, or maybe they'd pay a fine, or what, there was going to be a prosecution. I think considering who Tom was and all that had taken place in the exchanges between them leading up to this, I think that was probably very naive on his part, because by that point, it seemed that Mr. Crosland was absolutely in a rage. So it doesn't seem like it was just going to kind of go down peacefully.
By the time Scott Teeter hears Rainbow Farm is burning, calls to the Cass County Sheriff's Office warn Tom is setting buildings on fire to ambush responding officers.
Neighbors tell the sheriff's office Tom asked them to leave the area because all hell's going to break loose this weekend.
When it got to a point, I had to leave the farm because I wasn't going to get into a private war with the county.
Police order a news helicopter to land when officers hear 30 shots coming from Rainbow Farm. Because shooting at an aircraft is a federal offense, this bullet hole found on the helicopter triggers the involvement of the FBI.
Tom said, "No way. I'm not going to let them take my property. I'm not going to let them throw me in prison. And if we can help it, we're not going to let them take our son.
Michigan State Police set up a perimeter of snipers, alternating tactical support in 24-hour shifts with the FBI. Over the next 2 days, officers on the ground hear regular gunfire from Rainbow Farm. A police aircraft is shot at.
Authorities use friends and family as intermediaries during negotiations. One says he's seen propane tanks, gas cans, straw bales, and detonation wire in Tom and Raleigh's home. The two say they won't surrender until they have a chance to talk to their son, Robert, who's still in foster care.
They were pushing his buttons for 5 years. They knew that they were keeping money out of his hands. They took a child out of his family. They were pushing his buttons. They drove him to the actions that he took.
On Monday, September 3rd, 76 hours since Tom Crosland and Roland Rahm missed their court appointment, officers see Tom leave his house with Brandon Peoples, a friend who had snuck on the property during the standoff.
The two are picking up food and supplies.
Tom carries a loaded Mini-14 military assault rifle with an 80-round magazine.
In less than 20 minutes, Tom will die.
What's in there?
This is where Tom was shot.
It took Doug nearly 2 decades to return to this spot.
So Tom came in here hanging onto a rifle, and the official story says he came face to face with an FBI agent, raised his gun, and one shot through the head killed him. Brandon Peoples was behind him. He said he was down tying his shoe. He thought he got hit by shrapnel, but it was fragments of Tom's skull that had hit him, and that they were digging out of him later.
Brandon Peoples tells investigators he heard yelling before the shooting. FBI, FBI, put it down, stop, FBI.
The forensic pathologist says a bullet wound under Tom's right armpit could not have occurred if Tom was not raising his arm when the shot was fired.
An FBI sniper kills Grover Thomas Crosland with a gunshot to the head, 3/4 of an inch above his right eyebrow.
This has been an uncomfortable place for me to come to, just because I can't clear from my mind what happened here. A lot of people like to come up here and smoke a joint and get to know Tom and give their respects, and that's all wonderful and beautiful, and I'm glad people are doing that. But for me, it's very difficult.
If you obey the law and follow the parameters of the law, you know, things are going to be fine.
Current Cass County prosecutor Victor Fitz took the job following Teeter 2 years after the standoff at Rainbow Farm. He sees the aggressive enforcement against Rainbow Farm leading up to the standoff as a necessary part of public safety maintenance for then prosecutor Teeter.
You have the opportunity to help us change the world in a positive direction, or you have the opportunity to continue the path you're on and have the blood of a government massacre on your hands. It's your choice.
You know, in society, it can't always be about me. And if you listen to that letter, it's all about the lamentations about what is unfair to him and to his life and so forth. And again, he had the key to his freedom, and that was just to obey the law.
The spot where Tom died is now a small memorial, with a cross planted at the center of a cleared path.
First time I came back here after he was shot, well, I felt his presence very much, and to say the least, it was a scattered presence. It was like he was really trying to pull himself back together. I felt that, and it overwhelmed me, and I don't come up here that often.
But Raleigh Rahm is still at the house on the corner of the property. He doesn't know Tom is dead.
He doesn't know just after sunrise he will die. As Tom Crosland's body is on the way to the hospital, Raleigh Rahm is still holding out in their home.
The government has taken his son, killed his lover, and they're ready to take his property. Officers deliver a handwritten plea to Raleigh from his 11-year-old child.
From your son, Robert. Hey, Dad, please come out so no one gets hurt. I love you a lot. We can do all of the fun things we did before, okay? Dad, I love you a lot. You remember all the good things we used to do, like playing paintball wars or playing bumper cars and the golf carts? I am safe and okay. I am in good shape until you get out. Love, Robert.
Raleigh will not see his son again. People who knew him describe Raleigh as almost being caught up in Tom's personal fight with the prosecutor.
ABC 57, examining the motion to revoke bond against Roland Rahm, found only one mention of his name in the statement of facts supporting the motion. There are 6 references to Tom Crosland. The document is a word-for-word match of the motion against Crosland.
Raleigh was a quieter type person. But he would have been there with Tom no matter what. He would have stood right there next to Tom no matter what.
Just after 3 a.m. Tuesday, September 4th, officers fire 3 projectiles into the house to wake Raleigh up for negotiations. He tells officers if he can talk to his son, Robert, in person, Raleigh will surrender at sunrise. A sergeant with the Cass County Sheriff's Department gets Robert out of foster care.
6 a.m. Negotiators tell Raleigh he will see his son when he surrenders. By 6:05, the house is on fire.
Anybody that knows Raleigh knows he would have turned himself in. He would not have went out there to shoot and kill no one. That wasn't Raleigh.
Boss Crosland still questions the official narrative of Raleigh's death.
For some reason, they wanted Raleigh dead. Raleigh didn't have a choice to come out alive.
As officers approach the burning home, 2 members of the Michigan State Police see Raleigh run under a nearby pine tree with a rifle. They would later tell investigators Raleigh is in a ready position to shoot officers stepping toward the house.
Before Raleigh ever pulls the trigger, a state police sergeant and an MSP trooper fire 10 shots, killing Raleigh on the spot with a fatal wound to the chest.
I do think they tried to assassinate those police officers, no question about that. They were shot upon, they almost were assassinated. Law enforcement, that was the last thing they would have preferred to do in this situation.
Being persecuted and thrown in prison, and lives and families and livelihoods were being destroyed because a grown adult decided to smoke some marijuana. And the activity that took place up here against Tom Crosland and Raleigh Rahm just threw the Constitution and civil liberties into the wastebasket.
ABC 57 has obtained never-before-seen photographs of Rainbow Farm shortly after the standoff.
9 buildings, a mobile home, and Tom's Volkswagen burned. The fire marshal believes it was arson, but says the extent of the damage is too severe to determine an exact cause.
Investigators never find the booby traps, explosives, or heavy artillery Tom claimed to have hidden at Rainbow Farms. Both shootings are considered justified.
ABC 57 reached out to former Sheriff Joe Underwood, FBI officials, and former Cass County prosecutor Scott Teeter. All denied our request for an interview.
There was no reason for this to happen. What happened out here, a situation that was allowed to get totally out of control. It didn't need to happen.
The standoff draws attention of activists and publications from across the country, becoming a national headline.
Then, 9/11.
There are no words.
The country turns its attention from the war on drugs to the war on terror. The standoff at Rainbow Farms is largely forgotten.
I looked at, like Tom said, Ruby Ridge and Waco, and I'm like, all right, people are talking about this stuff, but they literally just went in and killed 2 men, and it's like, it never happened.
Does that bother you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, especially on Raleigh's behalf.
The government takes control of Rainbow Farm, dividing it into several properties. Vandalia returns to being a quiet corner of Michigan.
Until a new group brings back the Rainbow Farm name in true Rainbow Farm fashion. Today, pot is legal in Michigan.
You can walk into a dispensary like this one, buy some weed, and freely smoke it in a private place.
This was the dream for Tom Crosland and Raleigh Rahm. It only happened about 2 decades too late.
He was willing to die for his beliefs. He felt like, as an American citizen, you know, there was nothing wrong. If people can go out and get drunk on alcohol every day of the week, then there's no reason why somebody can't go home and smoke a joint.
Michigan becomes the 10th state to legalize recreational marijuana December 2018.
But Newburgh Township, where Rainbow Farm is located, still won't allow legal weed with an ordinance in place barring any shops from opening up.
So we're working currently with the municipality to try and overturn that.
Rick Anstis is part of a budding movement to expand access to recreational marijuana in Southwest Michigan. He still remembers his teen years, spending his weekends camping at Rainbow Farm.
Young kid, Friday night, one of the things was to go up to the gas station and find out who and what was going on a Friday night. And often that's where you would find and hear, maybe see a flyer for hemp aid or roach roast or something going out on Vandalia.
Today, Rick is the vice president of the newly reimagined campground, bringing back the Rainbow Farm name at its original site, and bringing back the original Rainbow Farm essence.
It's togetherness, community, sustainability, love, and caring for one another in whatever value that may be, and letting people be themselves. That's, the beauty of Rainbow Farms.
Rainbow Farm is where Tom Crosland and Raleigh Rahm lived their American dream. It's where they would die at the hands of the U.S. government. Today, their legacies are as controversial as legalization itself.
This would be their dream come true. They were just too early. Something that those men got shot and killed for. I mean, how can something that was that bad be now legal?
People aren't going to die because they can't have a marijuana cigarette, but they are going to die if they shoot at a police officer or if they shoot at a helicopter.
It's Michigan. We fought for years to enjoy this. Tom Crosland and Raleigh Rahm, if they were alive, they'd be right out in the middle of it all smoking the biggest joints they could find, because that was the dream they had.
Everybody was up to get pot legalized, And they were one of the biggest ones in Michigan. Well, one of them in Michigan that was up to legalize pot. And I guess they were too early. And sometimes you got to pay the price. And evidently they paid the wrong price. They ended up losing their lives over it. And hard to believe it's 20 years, but I can always remember the good times.